Ari, and thank you for all that you do to allow us on a Sunday to gather together from across the country and across the world to enjoy each other's company. And I am so delighted to have my colleague and friend, Rabbi Adrian Gottfried, as our featured presenter. It was a great joy to spend time with you, Adrian, in Sao Paulo. You are the reason I went to Sao Paulo, in part, in that you invited me to present to your congregation and even translated one of my books into Portuguese that enabled me to tour Brazil with colleagues that you introduced me to. So it's not just quid pro quo, but it's because you're the kind of rabbi who makes things happen that you are indeed the right person to introduce us to Jewish life in Sao Paulo and more broadly to Jewish life in Latin America. So to get started, many of the participants have not been to Sao Paulo. Describe the cosmopolitan city in which you live.
Okay, first of all, thank you, Ari, for the invitation. Thank you, Elie, for kindness. And thank you all for coming for this program. I'm very honored and humbled to share with you some of the ideas, what's happened down to the Colorado River. And a little bit like to know about Brazil. It's a huge country, a continental country, like the States, 220 million people, all Brazil. The biggest city is São Paulo. The state of São Paulo is 40 million people, and the capital is 13 million people. So just an idea how big is São Paulo and how big is Brazil. It's the first economy on Brazil. And we have 100,000 Jews in all Brazil. Half of them are in São Paulo, 50,000 Jews in all São Paulo in the metropolitan area. So the people of São Paulo come from all over Brazil. Actually, just for everyone know, the first Jews who come to Brazil was in Recife. It's a boat come from the Netherlands to New York, but they arrived to Brazil, Recife. They stay there. They started the first Jewish community, the first synagogue that's still open till today. The community in São Paulo, it's very large with a lot of different synagogues and kind of Jewish institutions. And most of them are Ashkenazi Jews, but there are very important Sephardic Jews. One, it's very famous because they have very rich, wealthy men. Safra family, it's in Brazil. They start his business here in Brazil. And they maintain many of the Sephardic congregation and institutions here in São Paulo. We have a lot of a Jewish federation here in São Paulo and a large JCC that's huge. They call themselves the biggest in Latin America, and it's very big, actually. Just for now, in Latin America at large, Argentina, it's the most Jews in all Latin America, 180,000 Jews, and the second one is Brazil. So Argentina and Brazil have 2/3 of all Latin American Jewry.
Now, you mentioned that there's a Jewish community center in Sao Paulo and about 50,000 Jews in the city. How many restaurants pre-COVID, 2 years ago, are there at your Jewish community center?
There are at least 10 restaurants and some coffee shops and other places to eat.
So that for me is a place to start because it's so different than what we in America have as a JCC. It's more, there's also a big day school on that campus.
Actually, our JCC, it's little different from the American JCC because it's the only one in the city in São Paulo. And they have inside many programs like sports, cultural, also Jewish day school with 800 students, a kindergarten, and other programs that actually don't run regularly at the JCC.
It's really amazing in terms of it's like a village surrounded by a wall. Why the wall? To what degree is security an issue?
Yes, South America, Latin America, it's a place, it's not so safe. So the walls are part of our urban footage because of the poor people. They build walls to separate and to protect. There's another reason in the Jewish community. You must remember that in 82 and 84 was a bomb in the Israel embassy in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, and also in the Jewish Community Center, AMIA, in Buenos Aires in 1994. So because of that, all the Jewish institutions have very special arrangement regarding security.
So that's a good bridge, Adrian. We'll come back to Sao Paulo and talk specifically about your synagogue and its growth, as well as the challenges of Jewish life today. But let's go back to your upbringing, which was in Buenos Aires. Tell us a little bit about your parents and your parents' generation in Buenos Aires.
Okay. I born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. My parents also are from Argentina, but my grandparents come from Russia and Poland. So I was the second generation in Argentina. I was raised in a Jewish day school. My mom, who now lives in Israel, was a Hebrew teacher. And from beginning, me and my three brothers go to the Jewish day school, and we're very fluent in Spanish and in Hebrew, but not so religious. What we call traditional Jews. Some Chagim, and that's it. But my turning point in my life was when I was prepared to buy my bar mitzvah. I was choose a synagogue, and my tutor was made aliyah like 3 months before my bar mitzvah. So I need to change my synagogue, and my mom decided to go to a new synagogue from an American rabbi called Marshall Mayer, who dedicated this class to his blessed memory. And the encounter with Rabbi Marshall Mayer at Bethel congregation in Buenos Aires was transformative to me, because from this point on, I decided that it's possible to be a Jew, a committed Jew, and also a modern man. So with Marshall and with his congregation, Comunidad Bethel in Buenos Aires, I discovered a new kind of Judaism. I started to go to Camp Ramah in Argentina, that Marshall started when he arrived then. And from them, I studied at the Seminario Rabbinico in Buenos Aires with Marshall, and Marshall was my rabbi in the synagogue and my rabbi in the seminary in Buenos Aires. So he was the reason that I chose rabbinate.
So tell us again, I had the privilege to know Marshall when he moved to New York toward the end of his life and was the rabbi of B'nai Jeshurun and revitalized the congregation. But tell us about your teacher, all the more for an U.S. audience who may not know his name. Bring him to life for us.
Okay. For me, it's a privilege because Marshall was a very powerful person, and he was the man, the rabbi, who transformed Latin American Jewry without any doubts. So just to understand, Marshall was one of the many discipled Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. And in 1959, Marshall decided to come to Latin America, to Argentina, for 2 years, just to open her mind, because he lost his father and his brother. And he decided to go because Heschel was visiting Latin America and say they need like a rabbi to the youth in Argentina. He came to Argentina for 2 years. The story is like my story in Brazil. I came from 2 years and already 30 years. Marshall stayed a bit less than 30 years. And when he arrived to Buenos Aires, he discovered a vital Jewish life without any content. So at the beginning, he was not very welcome in the congregation he was invited, because the senior rabbi was very formal and Marshall was a person who liked revolutions. So they don't want revolution in his synagogue. So at the end of the contract, Marshall asked two important persons what he will do. He come back to the New York to continue to the seminary, to doctoral program, or stay and start his startup in Argentina. At that time, the startup, it's not a word from that time, but Marshall was an entrepreneur. So he asked Heschel, so Rabbi Heschel, Dr. Heschel, what I do? I stay in Argentina or I come back to New York? And Heschel answered to Marshall, you want to study about story or make story? The second person who asked Marshall what to do was Dr. Martin Buber in Jerusalem. And Buber said to Marshall, who needs another piece of Jewish history? You can do better than that. Who will read this, your paper, your doctorate? So Marshall came back to Argentina and start two institutions that's long until today. One was my congregation then, Comunidad Betel, a new kind of congregation, egalitarian, with participation, with music, Ashkenazi and Sephardi, with a very, very important work with youth. Marshall spent all the summer with the youth. I was testimony of that. And the second institution he started was the Seminario Rabínico Latinoamericano in 1962, with a car with some books. And because he believed, and actually his thesis was proof, that we need Latin American rabbis and not rabbis from Europe, who was at that time the only rabbis around Latin America. So from 1962 to today, the Latin America Seminary ordained more than 110 rabbis. Many of them are in the States, in Latin America, and in Israel. So Marshall transformed that story, and I was privileged to be part of that. Another word about Marshall. Marshall was the only rabbi who stood before the military government of Argentina in 1976 to 1983. He was violent against human rights, against Jews specifically. And Rabbi Meir was the only clergy people who welcomed the mothers of the people, the missing people, who the military take away without any judgments. So he also was a champion of human rights. In the same pathway of Rabbi Heschel was with Martin Luther King in Selma, Alabama.
And he actually wasn't there. He appointed, when the junta was replaced, a commission to investigate the atrocities of people being kidnapped by the government. And didn't they actually change the law to allow him to serve on the official commission?
Yes. When the democracy came back to Argentina in 1983, the new president chose 10 people that was very important. One of them was Rabbi Marshall Meir, to research and to go to the trial to the military. So Marshall Meir was allowed to serve in this special commission. And because he was very well connected with the world, with the States and the Europe, he collected the testimony of many of the people who afterward was important to put all the generals in prison. And there is another very important, the final document of this commission that was the base to put the military in jail was called, because of Rabbi Meir, Never Again, because of the ghetto de Varsovia, the Warsaw Ghetto. Never Again, and they, till today, it's one of the most important pieces of the judiciary in Argentina.
So I'll just say another word about Marshall Meyer, and then we'll go back to talk a little bit about Argentinian Jewry. And that is, in the United States, music as part of a conservative synagogue really got launched when Marshall Meyer returned to the United States in the late 80s, particularly with B'nai Jeshurun, with one of his students being his assistant, and now for many years, Rabbi Roli Matalon, creating a kind of service that was like he had experienced in Buenos Aires, very musical. As an aside, Marshall Meyer's undergraduate studies at Dartmouth got him a degree in drama. And he was a very charismatic, dramatic figure for whom music was very important. Talk a little bit about how that service you grew up with in Buenos Aires at Beth El, what was it like? Who came? And how did it shape you?
Actually, that's very important because I believe that the conservative movement worldwide is like what I have in Argentina, in Buenos Aires with Marshall. Marshall was a very powerful singer, and he loved music a lot. And there's a small story that I want to tell everyone. When Marshall decided to come to Latin America, there were two positions available at that time. One was in Rio de Janeiro, and the second in Buenos Aires. Marshall loved opera. So Marshall asked, how many operas are in Rio de Janeiro? And they answered, two. Two every week? No, two every semester. So he used to do the same question in Buenos Aires. How many operas are in Buenos Aires? Two every week. And the Colón Theater was 2 blocks from the synagogue from when Marshall was hired. I want to tell this story because Marshall can be in Brazil, but he moved to Argentina. But for him, the music was the most powerful experience in the synagogue. So he have a very talented, gifted musicians that work with Marshall, and all our service with a lot of music, a lot of instruments. When I came first time to the States, and I saw that in the conservative synagogue, there are no instruments at that time, was a shock for me, because for me it was sure that every synagogue have music. Actually, Marshall, when he came back to New York after a year in LA, in University of Judaism, he came back the same revolution, and after BJ, many conservative congregations start to use music a lot.
So, I want to just underscore this and pause to say that our synagogue, Congregation B'nai Israel, yesterday with Ari's wife, Amy Robinson Katz, as our cantor, had all kinds of musical instruments and musicians doing a traditional Shabbos morning service. And that's a direct line to Marshall Meyer and the revolution in Buenos Aires that went to New York and around the country. And so now let's go to your synagogue. You grew up in Buenos Aires and you wound up in Brazil. You saw Marshall as your mentor and as a role model. And I dare say many of the things that he did, you've done for the Brazilian community, translating books, music, and visual art. So I'm going to pause to say Adrian's background, Rabbi Gottfried's background, is of an artist from Israel named David Gerstein. David Gerstein, is a very well-known Israeli artist. You've seen in gift shops in Israel flowers that are very colorful. Those are David Gerstein's, or a man on a bicycle. But Adrian, you commissioned the artist David Gerstein to do your ark in your synagogue. It's the only synagogue in the world to commission this colorful lively expression of Israeli art. Talk about the connection of your congregation to arts and to Israel.
Okay, it's a pleasure, and especially today, because today it's the birthday of Dudu Gershtin. So it's important to say that. 10 years ago, I actually worked as a rabbi 25 years in my congregation. And 10 years ago, we built a new building to accommodate all our needs, and a new building that we planned from scratch. Before that, we rent some spaces, but when we decide that the new building must have some Israeli art as part of the essential part. And I have a piece of David Gershtin in my home, and I say we need some colorful that will be the center of the congregation. And if you can see in my backdrop, it's like letter from the Torah, modern and traditional, that came from the Torah. It's like going out from the ark to the people, and very colorful, because the pop art, like it's the kind of art of the Gershtin. And in the only two words that are words for real are the name of the congregation, Keilat Shalom, Comunidad de Shalom. So we have many pieces of Gershtin. For example, in our mikvah, the blessing also was done by David Gershtin, and we have butterflies from Gershtin, many pieces of art, and we have very strong connection with Israel, because we believe in São Paulo and Comunidad de Shalom that when stronger is our bond to Israel, stronger is our Judaism. So we have, in the new building, we have a very special and acoustic place. We invite many Israeli artists, many famous like Rami Kleinstein, Idan Reichel, Achinoam Nini, that come many times to sing, to bring Jewish music and art to our congregation. And also, I myself lead more than 10 family trips to Israel, including one wine tour to Israel, to go to the wineries in Israel that are excellent in marbles. You know, Israel have 500 winery, excellent in leather, excellent wine, but Israel is very unique. So I recommend see the Israel wine, that it's amazing.
So it's one thing that's distinctive to be in your congregation, Adrian, is to feel this creative spirit. There's music in services. Friday night is festive. Many people come because and part of the music and the art, and yet you have a mikveh, which, again, many conservative synagogues in America would not have. Talk about that traditional dimension as well.
Okay, when we started our congregation, one of the problems was that the mikvaot here in Latin America, like in all places, are run by Orthodox rabbis who it's complicated to get there. So we decide that we need to have a mikvah to our needs that include not only conversions, but yes, a new possibility of renewal. And we have this amazing and powerful ritual, and you use to many places before bat mitzvah, before weddings, when you changing work, after, before disease. We use a lot our mikvah, and the mikvah, it's a place that everyone can come in. And I must say, I have many non-Jews that for different reasons, they want to use the mikvah, and for them also it's a transformative experience. A couple of weeks ago, a medical doctor called me. He has women with some problems because problems with sexual assault, and he need a ritual to transform this position. And he asked me if I will allow her to come to the mikvah. Like, of course, yes, without blessing, but it was very important from them, and he was very thankful. So our mikvah, it's pretty well used.
So Brazil is largely a Catholic country, though becoming more evangelical. And likewise, I assume that the Jewish community is mostly Orthodox, though that's changing. How would you characterize the denominations Jewishly of the Sao Paulo community?
Okay, I need a word about the Brazilian religion people. Actually, formally, Brazilian is Catholic, but more and more it's more evangelic. And the new kind of evangelic. It's not the traditional evangelical. So, and it's another, in Brazil, we have two kinds of religion very powerful in the north of Brazil. The Indian religions, the people who are native Brazilian, and the African religion, that's very powerful. What's happening in Brazil, that many people pick up from all the religions and make like a salad, a mix of them, and choose whatever they want. So it's very, very, very unique, because there are Jews that also go to the African religions or go to the evangelical. If for them it's fine, it's okay. So you need to go to understand the Brazilian Jewish way of thinking, that religion, it's not exclusive, it's inclusive. From some it's too inclusive, but it's different from Argentina. That's don't happen there. Argentina is very Catholic, very like everyone in their square. Brazil, it's all mixed. Speaking about the Jewish community, most of the people, the Orthodox community, it's bigger, it's large, but it's actually, as in many other places, they're not the majority. They have more synagogue and rabbis, but I will say that from the 50,000 Jews in São Paulo, like 20% are Orthodox, 20% are with conservative, reform, or liberals, and the rest are non-affiliated.
So let's hear a little bit about your congregation. Tell us a little bit about the community that you have created. I know you came and there were 40 families. Now it's close to 600 families. Tell us about the challenges and achievements of your community.
Okay, we built our congregation from 25 years ago, and was a certain point we decided to go to the new building, just consolidate our congregation. There are three main issues that are important in congregation. The first one, it's a youth movement. We start our local chapter of Noam. Noam, it's Noar Masorti, the youth of the conservative movement. But different from the WWII in America, we have regular activities every week and 2 summer and winter camp every year. So it's we have altogether 150 youth that came, and now they are preparing our summer camp in January. January is our summer, and we expect after the corona, 100 kids. And they are very important because they are the continuity of our congregation. As part of the work with the youth, they spent a year in Israel in the program called Shnat Akshara, and when they come back, they serve as the leadership of the youth movement. And now, in the last 10 years, we sent more than 80 madrichim to Israel. They come back, and now in the board of the director of the congregation, the 2 persons who work with youth are ex-Bogrim, people who were madrichim in their 30s, and now serve in the board and I believe that in a couple of years, and there will be the new president or treasurer of the congregation, this leadership.
Now, regarding Israel, your brother is a product of Marshall Meyer in Buenos Aires, who made Aliyah and created Beit Tfilah Yisraeli, a very musical, non-Orthodox Tel Aviv community. Ari Katz and I went to Israel together with members of our community and spent an evening with the wonderful music, some of it original. Talk a little bit about how Latin America has influenced Israel.
Okay, actually, Esteban, my brother, and me and my sister all were to Bethel, a campground in Argentina, and we also very engaged. And we started our Jewish community life in Argentina. My brother make Aliyah in 1983. He started study movies and TV and theater, drama. And after many years success with writing movies and theater pieces, he started a small chabura in Tel Aviv that called Beit Tfilah Israeli. And he decided after that actually he can find a synagogue in Tel Aviv, so he started a new one. And he was the first one to make this congregation in the public space. So he started to make Kabbalat Shabbat and the port in Tel Aviv, open space. He started small with 50 people, 100 people. And now there are more than 1,000 people who are all the summer in Beit Tfilah Israeli. Esteban, after that, changed profession, go to rabbinical school, become a rabbi. So my father used to say they have two actors, one with kippah and one without kippah. Now are two with kippah.
You know, the thing that's the first time I was introduced to Beit Tfilah Yisraeli was by a rabbi friend who had made Aliyah, and he told me about Friday night at the outdoor service at the port with people singing what a wonderful world translated into Hebrew, arm in arm. And he said to me, being at that service, I understood for the first time that what Shabbat is. That Shabbat is falling in love with the world anew every week. And so, again, I smile because that too is a product of Marshall Meyer and Buenos Aires, the community that you've grown in Sao Paulo, and as that led to America opening up to music in a direct line with his students. So likewise in Israel, the growth of this phenomenon of public prayer with musical instruments. It's quite a legacy. Looking forward, what do you see as your next goal for you and your community?
I'll have many challenges. For example, the corona make a new challenge because as everyone in the world, we go into streaming our services. And, now I believe that community you build in personal relationship, not online. Online, it's okay to be with many people like your excellent audience, but you need to have eye-to-eye contact. So one of the challenges will have to go back to a normal life with a minyan and when person-to-person encounters that will be important to sustain and maintain the congregation. In this challenging time, we have a lot of program online that was excellent, but was very hard to the people that come to the congregation for the first time, people that start to study to conversion or to bar mitzvah, or the young couples. For them, the new ones, the rookies, are very hard. So that's one of the challenges. The second challenge is how to include more people that have no synagogue, in no relation with Judaism. There are many, many people unaffiliated, and one of our mission is to bring them and to offer a possibility and Jewish connection. And that's it. It's a very, very, very important challenge. And the third, it's continue to grow in more programs and more studies and more publishing works. Now, this coming in 2 weeks in Hanukkah, we'll publish a new edition of Rabbi Heschel's book that we published first in 2002, was sold out, and we have a new version of this book. We call this The Last of the Prophets, and are essays from Rabbi Heschel with new perspective. For example, I asked one of the main scholars on Heschel in Israel called Dror Brondi, that he write about how Heschel came to Israel 50 years after he died. In December, will mark the 50 yahrzeit of Heschel. Professor Daniel Feinstein have a essay on how is relevant Heschel in Latin America. And Susanna Heschel, the daughter of she writes a very special introduction about what Heschel will say about the politics on 2021 if he was alive. And this will come in Portuguese in Hanukkah.
So we're going to transition to questions from the larger participants, but in doing so, let me pull a few things together. And I pause to smile the impact of individuals on both Jewish life and larger life, the impact Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel made on a student, Marshall Meyer, and the impact Marshall Meyer made on his students, you being one of those prize students. I'll mention Adrian, when I met him, was president of the Masorti rabbis, the rabbis of Latin America, and has not only been an important force for Brazilian Jewish life, but the larger life, carrying on the voice of his teacher, doing so with the synagogue, which we've run out of time, but a synagogue also that's a leader in Tikkun Olam, not only in Brazil, but around the world. And maybe you'll talk a little bit about that, because for Rabbi Meir, that was essential to living Judaism, as well as the music that has also impacted on the United States and Israel. My last pause of pulling things together is to honor, Adrian, your wife, Mariana, an important Jewish educator. She's the woman who helped create the Jewish Studies program at that flourishing day school at the JCC. And to acknowledge that Adrian is a marathon runner, and it's that quality of being focused on a goal, step by step, that is your gift, Adrian, to your community and to us who are your friends. So with that, some questions from our participants.
So I've been enjoying this interview. As I said, this is our first live program from Latin America, and I'm hoping that we'll go to some other guests that Rabbi Spitz had recommended. So we'll go to Argentina, I think, in the next few months as well. But here are some questions people ask. People would like to attend your online services. Do they just go to your website? Is it broadcast on YouTube? How do they find it so they can get a taste of your davening?
Okay, actually, we have a YouTube channel called Comunidad de Shalom. I will send in to you. You can distribute to everyone.
Terrific. Another question that we kind of tangentially got to, but what's your comfort level of walking outside as a rabbi? Do you wear your kippah? Do people walk out in the streets with your kippot? Is it a safe environment?
It's very safe environment. I live here 30 years, have no problem at all to wear my kippah without any problem, any place in the city.
You know, Rita Rubin just celebrated her birthday, and she's one of our patrons, and she and Bob, they like to go traveling. So if they want to come to Sao Paulo, how do they reach out to the Jewish community so they can join you and learn about, you know, the community and know where to go? Is there like a place that they go online? Do they email you? Like, you know, you're busy, so who do they?
Yes, you can email me. I will be more than happy. Elie can tell that I also a very successful travel agent to see what's happening here in Brazil, and I will be more than welcome to suggest some spots here in São Paulo or Brazil at large.
The question I have, since I am married to a chazan who does pick up melodies, and since I do often tune in to B'nai Jeshurun to enjoy their davening, the melodies you use in your synagogue, where do they come from? I mean, do you have your own melodies? Are they melodies you've picked up from Israel? Are they American? What do you like to use in your services?
We have a very eclectic collection of music. We learn with Marshall that we need to be part of our society and congregation. And for example, we have very Brazilian tunes that we use in our tefillah. But also we use many American melodies and Israeli melodies. For example, What a Wonderful in Hebrew, it's part of our new Siddur. And many of so we have melodies like classical, Hebrew, and new ones. And we are very, as we study with Marshall, and actually I need to mention the musical director of Bnei Jeshurun, Ariel Priven. It's a close friend of mine. We were madrichim together, we'll run kids services together, and he is one of the source of inspiration. And also Esteban, my brother in Israel, who bring Israeli music. So we have many eclectic, so we can use Puccini, classical music, and the new piece of Hanan Ben-Ari. It's a very new one, Israel singer, and also like a Brazilian samba for our Adon Olam. It's like this kind of mix.
So we will join you. All the people online, we have 200 people or more online. Will come to. You're going to get like this pop on this Friday night davening.
It'll be my pleasure and my honor.
Mark asked a few questions. One question was, what do you do about same-sex marriages at your congregation? It's an issue, obviously, we've been dealing with in America. How do you deal with it in maybe? I mean, I would assume is more conservative population.
Okay, it's quite different because I'm the only rabbi in Brazil that perform same-sex wedding at the synagogue, and the only one. Actually, São Paulo, it's a very, very important city from LGBTQ plus people. And I'm very happy that my congregation support me and embrace the same-sex families. And one of them decide to make their wedding at the synagogue. And the congregation unanimously say it's fine because it's part of the rabbinical assembly protocol, the Committee General Standards, and they support me without any problem. It's not the same in other places because in other cities that are more parochial, are more conservative with a capital C, that's very complicated. But in our congregation are more than welcome. The point is that after this wedding, I have not a lot of wedding because here in Latin America, generally, in São Paulo in particular, the gay community, it's not so open. So it's still in this transition to be public.
A related question from Mark as well. I'll put it in a different way. What's your relationship with the other communities in other Jewish communities and non-Jewish communities? In some communities, Orthodox don't really interact well with conservative or reform. In some communities, I would say Orange County, there's a much better relationship. It's a smaller community. So do you interact with the Orthodox community? And also, do you interact with the non-Jewish Catholic or other communities? Do you have interactive programs?
Actually, we'll start with the non-other religion, that it's easy, and with our religion. So we have very active in cooperation with the Catholic Church, with the Evangelical. For example, with the pandemic, we have 2 big kitchens in the congregation. We start the pandemic, we start to cook meals to the poor people. So now we start a very strong program. We prepare more than 100 1,000 meals, and these meals was distributed by the Catholic Church. So we are very close friends and we work together. Also with the Muslim people. This program also have the Muslim people who work together. Regarding the Jewish community, we have very strong relations with other Masorti conservative congregation and Reform congregation without any problems. Unfortunately, with the Orthodox, we have no so well activities. We share congregants because the people, go to this synagogue, and at that time we have some respect that we have the owner of our congregants. But actually, it's impossible to do a program with the Orthodox congregation because they don't allow.
Okay, well, thank you. It is challenging. It's ironic that it's more challenging within our own people than interacting with other faith communities, but it is not unusual. So Rabbi Spitz, turning to you, tell us about your Shabbat experiences in going to Brazil. Why should we go to Brazil? What are we gonna see there?
So a few thoughts that come up as I listen to my friend Rabbi Adrian. In terms of social conscious and social awareness, I went to a bat mitzvah at the synagogue the last time I was there, and I saw something I had never seen before, biodegradable kippahs that were handed out from paper, but dafka, kind of biodegradable was the message, an awareness of taking care of the planet. So the first thing that surprised me was how cosmopolitan and aware the community was, a community of many international business people. The other thing that's remarkable about Brazil is the impact of Jews along the Amazon, something I never knew about or thought about. So Manaus, which was a lot in the news because it got hit hard by COVID, has this remarkable Jewish community of Jews that came from, in its history, 2 towns in northern Morocco, a French-speaking and a Spanish-speaking town, and that are a financial powerhouse in Manaus, as traders were there during the Brazilian rubber rush at the turn of the century. So Brazil is beautiful. It has pockets like Sao Paulo that are cosmopolitan, and there are surprises in terms of Jewish history that aren't just of the past, but of a very vibrant present. Adrian, would you add anything about the beauty of Brazil? You've been my tour guide for telling me where to go. About what's distinct, say a word about how Rio and Sao Paulo are the same and different.
Okay, Rio de Janeiro, it's very different from São Paulo. There's an old joke about people in Rio because the sea and the beach, they say they don't work. In São Paulo, because we have no sea, so everyone work. So, but actually it's different. A city have a sea and a beautiful place like Rio de Janeiro. But the Jews in Rio are very, there are 22,000 people there. Also, there's a liberal congregation like our colleague Rabbi Bonder, who start a very important congregation, a German congregation called Ari, and many Orthodox, Chabad, and and over. There are 2 or 3 very important Jewish day schools, very sophisticated. And actually, because of the economics, many of the people from Rio de Janeiro and other important cities like Curitiba or Porto Alegre, they're the big ones, they came to São Paulo because of the business. When the business start to going better, or they need to move to São Paulo, that is the center of the economics. So, but the congregations are very important. In the Northeast, there are many small congregations, many from Morocco, many from other places from Africa. They stay and maintain some important traditions in these small villages.
So a related question, is there a certain industry that the successful Jewish members of your Jewish community are involved with? Is there an industry that they have done very well in, that they have succeeded in? Or
Many. For
anything in
example,
particular? Yeah.
there's the most important cosmetic industry in São Paulo. It's from Curitiba, called Boticário. Have more than 4,000 franchising shops. It's very large. Other one, the most important plant of paper, it's called Suzano. It's from a Jewish family, very old. There are a lot of very important persons who work in industry and other places.
Do Leonie and Gail have asked, did you have to learn Portuguese when you moved? And do you preach in your normal service? I mean, are you preaching in Portuguese then?
Yes, it's very complicated because for American, it's better to learn Portuguese because it's another world. I came here with Spanish thinking that they understand me, and I was wrong. They don't understand me at all, and I need to speak Portuguese. The Spanish also work just to got a meal, and that's it. But to speak theology,
was that hard to learn?
To explain philosophy, to make understandable to the youth or the old people, you need to speak. And I have strong accent in Portuguese, of course.
So,
there we are.
Oh, you're back.
Yes. What another question that came in from Jake was, what percentage of the Jewish community in Brazil is affiliated?
I think that was 1/3.
1/3 of it. So 2/3 are unaffiliated?
Yes.
And by unaffiliated, in America, it really, I mean, from my perspective, means they don't belong to anything. They don't belong to the JCC. They don't go to a synagogue. They don't donate to their community. So you're saying 2/3 of the Jewish population is basically not involved in any way.
Yes, and it's more complicated because here in Latin America, the affiliation is different. To be part of the synagogue, it's something that it's not normal. Only you belong to a congregation or JCC if you want to. It's not like automatic. So actually, I believe that 2/3 are not related at any congregation, and many of our institutional Jews are in the same part of the JCC, the synagogue, the Jewish day school. They donate to WWII and to Israel, and it's a small part of the congregation that are active in the Jewish world.
Jeff Kaufman has asked for a link to the JCC of São Paulo. He said it's not that easy to find, so maybe after this, if you email me, I'll send it to people as well.
Okay, I will send. Okay.
And then Deborah asks, and I'm sure this applies to other people as well, if they had family that actually went to Brazil, and I think they may have lost track of them. So how do you find family, Jewish family in Brazil? Is there some organization that they can contact?
Yes, there is a Jewish here in São Paulo. It's the umbrella organization called our Jewish Federation, Federação Israelita de São Paulo, and they have a professional, and they can help in, and they have the names of many of the Jews, not all of them, but they can contact them, and you can reach them.
Okay. And then Jeff asks a follow-up question. Do you see a lot of proselytizing between like the evangelicals within the Jewish community?
Yes.
I assume you're not proselytizing in their population, but.
Yeah, that's a worldwide phenomenon, and especially we have one of the churches, very large, very powerful, who built here in São Paulo, one of the attractions of the city. It's they say for themselves, they build the third temple, the Solomon temple, real space. Elie was there
with Jerusalem stone and an Israeli architect 3 times the size of the former temple. Is that right, Adrian?
Absolutely. And these people, this church, evangelical sanctuary, have a capacity for 10,000 people. They pack 3 times a day, and they especially want to invite the Jews because, you know, for them, the evangelical, we the Jews are the connection to the history of them. So when you come to this congregation, evangelical congregation, you read the story of, they tell the story, the first temple, second temple, the church that the black space on the history, and this bishop called Edir Macedo, who in 1980 started this church, and he's the new Messiah, and he's the building of the new temple of Solomon.
With priests, with priests who give you a tour, dressed like the priests of old. It's quite a phenomenon. But what really makes it a phenomenon is, as you say, Rabbi Adrian, is the large attendance. They knocked down a big area in the downtown area to build this huge campus. If you think of Saddleback Church in Orange County, this is the phenomenon in downtown Sao Paulo, with this evangelical third temple. It is amazing.
That's a great question. Tom Barth, actually, good question. You know, in Orange County, California, we don't have the center of Jewish community. Maybe it's Irvine now because of the Jewish Community Center and the day school that's in the area, but Jews in Orange County are decentralized. Is there a Jewish neighborhood in Sao Paulo, you know, a distinct neighborhood where the Jewish community lives, or is it dispersed?
Actually, they changed along the time. Was one of the neighborhoods that was, it's called Bom Retiro, but now the Korean people live there, and they moved to another neighborhood called Higienopolis, and now they moved to another one, it's called Jardins. So it's not one word, but we say the Orthodox congregation are about in 2 neighborhoods, Higienopolis and Jardins.
Rochelle asked a question, but I'm going to turn it a little different. So how many conversions do you do a year in, you know, before COVID? I assume it's changed, but maybe not. And who is converting to Judaism in your community?
Actually, we have a very strong program in Jewish conversion. We're very proud of our students. I must tell that 2 of our converts become rabbis after a long journey. And we have like adults 10, 15 a year, and kids like 15, 18.
Do they come from a particular part of the non-Jewish world, or are they from different parts of the community in Brazil?
Different parts of the community. We have people went from Japanese people, black people, the different backgrounds.
Rochelle, who, if I don't ask the question, will, you know, chase me down at Kiddush, says I didn't ask her question appropriately. Her question was, who presses for conversion more, evangelicals or liberation theologists in what you've seen in Brazil?
Evangelical.
Okay, Rochelle, you don't have to.
The liberation theology are not so pressure on conversion, but the evangelical, yes, in São Paulo.
Okay. Well, I think we're out of time, Rabbi Spitz, but I wanted to thank you, Rabbi Spitz, for making this recommendation. I want to thank Rabbi Gottfried for joining us. What a great way to learn about a Jewish community that I've traveled many places in the world, and I assume there are many people online who've actually traveled more than I have, although I've been to quite a few countries. I've never been to South America, so maybe one day we will get down there and visit you. But I will attend your service online, and the good thing is, it's 5 hours early, so I could do it while I'm at my desk finishing up work, even with daylight savings time off here. Rabbi Spitz, do you have any final remark you want to share with us? Again, thank you for making this introduction to us.
I just want to say thank you, Rabbi Gottfried, Adrian. It is such a joy to have the opportunity to share you with a broader audience. And in that regard, thank you, Ari, for enabling the achievements of Comunidad Shalom to become more public and this invitation to join you for services. And I'll add, Brazil is lively and beautiful and worth adding to the to-do list of places to visit.
I will add, you should go to our new CSP shop online, get your CSP merchandise. We also have some other cool stuff, by the way. So when you go to Brazil, you'll take a picture of yourself, before shul. Don't do it in shul during services, please. Or the JCC, and we'll put you up on our website. Maybe you'll win something cool. But thank you, everybody. Wishing you a great Sunday. Looking for more adventures with Rabbi Spitz. We'll call us Adventures with Rabbi Spitz around the world. I'm hoping we'll get to Argentina. Rabbi Spitz has some great contacts in Paris and around the world. So thank you, Rabbi Spitz. Again, thank you, Rabbi Gottfried. Thank you, everybody. Keep safe. Get vaccinated. Happy birthday, Rita. And take care of yourselves, okay? Bye, everybody.
Bye.